Hey everyone, CWD Music Reviews here. I'm CWD and this is going to be a music review of the new De La Soul album and the Anonymous Nobody. De La Soul is the well-renowned, incredibly influential, conscious, abstract hip-hop trio, and this is their latest full-length album. Now, me personally, I can't say that I've been that invested in De La Soul's discography or the history of De La Soul, albeit I did take advantage of the time they made their discography free to download one Valentine's Day about 2 or 3 years ago. But regardless, I do enjoy albums like Stakes is High, and I did have a lot of anticipation to what this new album could have in store for me and people that have been fans of these guys. Now, they are known for the album Stakes is High. It's probably their most influential record. They're also known for their sophomore album, De La Soul is Dead, as well as a few features here and there, namely when they were featured on the Gorillaz song Feel Good Incorporated. A track that I had no idea actually had De La Soul on it until years and years later. I was maybe like 8. But for whatever reason, they seem to have kind of disappeared for a little while, and they're just now coming out with this comeback record. Comeback albums I have a hard time having optimism for. If you've been gone for so long, you're going to have two different perspectives of what to expect from you. You're either going to expect more of the same but better, or you're going to expect the fans to think that you've gone and done something completely different and it's going to be for the better and really breathe life into a new age of this band's career. As to where this leans, I think it might be trying to lean towards the latter. But unfortunately, I can't say that it goes all that well, and I'm incredibly disappointed with the results. Especially given that this is De La Soul, especially given that they crowdsourced to get this album funded. I'm already getting heated about this album. This album is about 17 tracks in length, about maybe an hour long. A bit lengthy, but if I do have to commend this album for one thing, it doesn't feel like it's an entire album long. There's definitely a kind of accessibility to a good chunk of the tracks, as well as the album as a whole in a way. But simultaneously, you do also have tracks that really have no place on the album or are just filler. Now, pretty much my main issue with this album as a whole is the production. It is hit or miss. Rather, more miss than hit. The thing about this album is, it is eclectic, but it's a forced kind of eclectic. It's not like that they were trying to come up with all these ideas and all of a sudden their creative process just led to them to make these eclectic type beats and instrumentals. No, they purposely made an eclectic album, and it doesn't go all that well for the most part. The opening track, Genesis, which is pretty much just an intro with Jill Scott doing the spoken word, it just sounds like some kind of monologue from some kind of uplift and feel-good Disney movie that nobody ever actually saw. The track Royalty Capes, which has these jarring horns that, again, continues with this cheesiness, given how fanfare-ish they are. Although one thing I do like about the track is how really mid-paced and kind of low-key the beats get, certainly. I do admire it for that, but this is just distracting as all get out. Or the track Snoopies, which has David Byrne, of all people, singing over this demo-ish Autechre instrumental. It certainly sounds like that. And for whatever reason, it does these like random jarring beat switches when De La Soul comes in and does a rap verse, and it doesn't sound all that cohesive. It just sounds like a mess. The track Here and After, it just sounds like a pop rock tune with a rap verse in it versus a hip hop song that maybe tries to do something interesting with this alternative rock instrumental, but it just sounds like a mess. I hate how compressed it sounds and how completely jarring and just overbearing it gets. It is way too distracting for its own good, and when I can hear the rap verses, it sounds so corny and so... The track Drawn The instrumental's not bad. It's certainly not bad at all. It's got a nice, low-key, jazzy vibe to it. Little Dragon sings pleasantly well all over this cut. I do like her vocals on here. But where is De La Soul? They are not to be found until the latter half of the track. Oh man, and then there's tracks like Property of Spitkicker.com and Memory of that are just way too low-key and just stripped back for its own good for me to take seriously. But the worst track in terms of production, and possibly even lyricism for that matter, is Lord Intended. And I had potential to like this thing, you know? The beats sounded grimy, it sounded nice and gritty in a way. I did like how the intro went, and it really did sound like that they were going to deliver these hard as nails, really gritty as fuck bars all over this what sounded like a battle rap instrumental that I was gonna like go head over heels for the course of 7 minutes. But the lines just fell flat one after another. There's just so many corny like rock references like "This Sabbath isn't black enough" or "We're going Megadeth." No, what are you doing? And then this thing just mutates into this really awful, really cliche arena rock instrumental with Justin Hawkins just doing his really corny 80s like rasp falsetto thing that stopped being cool after Guns N' Roses dropped their debut album. I can hardly contain my anger talking about this thing. The thing about this album is what De La Soul do lyrically isn't so much bad unless it's just blatant what they're doing is bad. There's just so many missteps in the production and in the features that it's hard for me to focus in on what it is they're talking about. I mean, take the track Houdini, which has an interesting beat, but why was 2 Chainz' verse the most interesting thing about the track? Although I will commend 2 Chainz for delivering a solid verse here, I don't know what it is about this album and the features on here that really outshine what it is De La Soul do consistently, but there you go. But there are tracks that I like. The tracks that I tend to like are the ones that balance this kind of production and instrumental style with some cool bars and features. And that's pretty much what De La Soul needed to come through track for track for track. Cool instrumental, thought-provoking and upfront bars, and maybe a good feature. And I can honestly say it only does this twice. Like the track Pain, which has a nice catchy and low-key funk instrumental on the back. I do like how catchy the hook is. Pain won't make it better! And Snoop Dogg has a pretty cool verse. He does this really chill, laid back, albeit kind of quickly mid-paced flow thing that I do like a lot. But I think my favorite track on the album, without a doubt, is Greyhounds with Usher. It's got a coherent lyrical message that I like a lot. It's pretty much about the journeys that life takes you. It pretty much turns the Greyhound buses into a uplifting and empathetic towards life kind of song that I do enjoy a lot. Whether that be you being this prostitute that needs to get on a bus to go back to his pimp or leaving the pimp or something of that nature, it's a nice track. It's a legitimately good song. Especially when Usher comes in and really sells the emotion that is supposed to be felt with this track. If only if each individual track could do the same thing and not be like the closing track Exodus, which is just this really flat, really unenthusiastic outro that has no place on the album and pretty much just ends the album off in just horribly distasteful fashion. I think the last straw for me when I was listening to this album was when I heard the interlude thing that promotional interlude You Go Dave thing. It's pretty much this ad that's within the album, which isn't inherently a bad thing. Pretty much saying, is what you're listening to on the radio just watered down? Is a lot of music nowadays disappointing you? Well, purchase this album and The Anonymous Nobody. Your faith in music will be restored again. And after listening to this album and The Anonymous Nobody, I can't say that it's going to do that for much of anybody. There is no excuse for this album to be as lackluster as it is. There is just none. They had this Kickstarter campaign that went phenomenally well, for as far as I know. They got the funds for this thing. They worked on it for years. They pretty much were building this hype to go for this album in particular. They restored a lot of people's interest in De La Soul, and for them to just come back and drop easily one of the most disappointing comeback records of this decade, it's just unprecedentedly audacious. The production is a mess. It's a eclectic hodgepodge. The lyrics, while not necessarily bad per se, aren't really standalone or delivered in such a inconspicuous manner that I can't really take them seriously. And the features, while none of them inherently bad, with the exception of maybe a couple, are outshining everything De La Soul themselves are doing. I have not been disappointed by an album since Explosions in the Sky. I mean, I hated the new Drake album. I really didn't care for the new Tegan and Sarah, but I expected those albums to not be that good. This is like the Explosions in the Sky thing, where I wanted it to be good and I expected it to be good, but it just wasn't. So pretty much it's just gonna end on this note. This album may have started with a genesis, and this album may have ended on an exodus, but if there is no revelations, there is no hope to what it is these guys are trying to convey. This album is a negative 1.6 out of +3. There was maybe a few cuts here and there that I liked, but not so much that made me want to return to this album ever again. I really hope that De La Soul realize that this isn't that great, and I really hope that if they do make more music in the future, that they really improve upon what it is they have done with this thing, because this is just not good. But if you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you like this album? Did you dislike this album? What was your reason for that, and what should I consider listening to and reviewing next? The CWD Music Reviews here, signing off.